Hello, hello, check, check. Hope you can hear me. What's up, everybody? John DeMorgile here, checking in for well, it's going to be a flat Earth video. Going to do some comments, responses, because, I
And
realized,
has the power to change the way you.
it's frustrating because you get a lot of similar comments from trolls over and over and over again. The same exact sort of comment. And to type out, responses to each person individually is time-consuming and productive. So hopefully, by responding to some of these comments and questions related to flat Earth and anti-science, um, we can sort of kill multiple birds with singular stones or whatever, right? What's up, shirtless flat earther? Yeah, doing well, man. All right, let's make sure the sound's coming. This is because sounds like I
And has the power to.
Okay, and if y'all could just make sure and let me know that whether or not you can hear me well, that would be great. Appreciate it, Didazio. I'd like to get confirmation on that from somebody else. Now we don't have to hide Unirock unless he starts. So I don't know if that's undoable, but yeah, if he starts trolling, then sure. But not that I'm going to lose any sleep over it either way. So good. So it looks like we're starting. Looks like people are popping in. Matthew Stevenson, same argument since 2015. Yeah. So, all right, since it looks like we're started and everything's going okay, I'm actually using Ethernet instead of Wi-Fi this time, so it seems like the stream is holding up okay. And we're just going to go through some comments and respond to some of these Globe Earth trolling comments on the fly. Right, and I just wanted to point something out. I do get a lot of comments or people accusing me of blocking them from the channel, and there is a fairly short list of people that are blocked from the channel for just being complete buttheads. But as you can see here, thousands and thousands of comments go into likely spam folder and held for review folder, and I have no control over that other than to go in and manually read through thousands of comments and either approve or deny them. And so just to give you an idea, some of these, like the likely spams ones, I find are like, why would they consider this to be spam? It doesn't make a lot of sense. They're actually genuine comments, whereas the trolls seem to get through at a higher rate. So that's always frustrating. So I don't know if I'm going to go through the likely spam or held for review. I may touch on them, but we'll just go to the published comments. And I just wanted to make that note because, I don't go around blocking people from commenting as a rule unless it's just egregious, the things that they're saying in the comments. And I do have some automatic filters on comments, so if you're like cussing people out in the comments section, then that's not going to get through automatically. But, in terms of blocking people from commenting, it's pretty short list. So, with that, I'm going to try to filter out some of the comments that are not flat Earth related, but my buddy Daryl Davis is the top comment, just so happens, and this is in response to the Mount Rushmore video I did yesterday. And he's actually hails, or his people are from the Lakota tribe, so I'm planning on talking with him and maybe doing a live stream in the near future to get some insight into what the Lakota people say about Mount Rushmore, the mountain of our forefathers, or the mountain of their six fathers, right? So let's kick it off with Wayne Allen. Wayne Allen says, and this is in response to the Midnight Venus video. I've actually got that one pulled up here at a sort of opportune moment. He says, even the old-timers called Venus the evening star. 11 p.m. is just 2 to 2.5 hours after sunset. Yeah, you're going to see it. At 2 or 3 a.m., you most certainly won't. This has been seen and noted for hundreds or thousands of years. What of it? And, again, the point is not that Venus has been documented in the night sky for hundreds of years or whatever. That's irrelevant. The point that I'm making is that observation is not compatible with the ball Earth model, and for a number of reasons. And this whole argument that 11 p.m. is somehow better than 3 a.m., we're talking about a circle here, so really 3 a.m. would be pretty damn close, like depending on the time of year. But if sun rises at 5:30 or 6, well, 3 a.m. is only 2.5, 3 hours before then, just as 11 p.m. is just 3 to 3.5 hours after sunset during certain times of the year, right? So the geometry here is pretty simple. According to the Baller theory, when you're on the night side of the Earth, you're going to be basically a microscopic speck on this ball. So here's an experiment that you can do. Anyone can do. Take a basketball or a pumpkin or anything spherical or spheroidal, and just take a magic marker and put a little dot on it somewhere in the middle, like around the equator, assuming that like the top of the pumpkin with the little root thing is the axis of rotation in this hypothetical. Okay, now if you begin, let's say you start with the dot that you just made with your little magic marker at the 12 o'clock position facing you, and then begin to rotate the pumpkin, or have a friend or an assistant rotate the pumpkin, on the axis, and you continue standing where you were, at the 12 o'clock position where the dot was aligned to you. At what point do you think the dot on that pumpkin or that sphere is going to disappear? And I will tell you that right around the point where it reaches 90 degrees from where you started, you're going to lose sight of that dot. Now, especially when you get into, say 110 degrees past where you started, you're absolutely not going to be able to see that dot. And I would submit, even if you tilt that pumpkin up 66.6 degrees or 23.4 degrees or whatever. Okay, and this is the exact same thing. Okay, so if this is supposedly the Earth with the Earth's orbital path, and this is supposedly Venus's orbital path, first I will mention a couple things. Now, the distance to Venus itself and the alleged size of Venus would technically make it too small to see, even when it's at its nearest. Okay, so even when Venus is very, very close to the Earth in this hypothetical, it would be too far to see. And I would mention that it would be a no-lit Venus. Much like the phases of the moon, the Venus would be backlit from the sun, reflecting that light back towards the sun, and you would have no Venus to speak of when it's exactly closest to the Earth. Okay? Now, when you get to where Venus is furthest from the Earth, on the opposite side of the sun, that's when it would be fully lit, and it's like way, way further. It should be way too small to see when it's fully lit, and of course it should be on the opposite side of the sun, so you would never even in a million years expect to see Venus when it's at its furthest away at night, because again, you can't see the sun at night, so how could you possibly see something that's behind the sun at night? Okay, so that leaves basically a range of areas that you could potentially see Venus slightly after sunset in this model. And that would be somewhere around the range of 90 degrees on either side of the sun, or up to somewhere, where it's coming around the back of the sun, or to this area. So you've got on this side maybe, I don't know, 25% of its orbital arc, allegedly, and the same thing on this side. Okay? Now, granted, if Venus is over here, it should be half lit, meaning the angular size of the object should be half of its actual size, according to an observer over here, meaning that it would be not only further away than when it's at its nearest, but it would also be half lit, so it would represent half of its actual angular size. Way too far to see. Okay, but my argument here, you can even sort of shelve the whole angular size thing, and I'll get into the numbers, but shelve that for a minute. Again, if you're a little dot on this ball and you begin spinning around to the back of it, and you would be microscopic in this case, right? Very, very small. The notion that you can somehow see around this curve hours after sunset to get a line of sight towards Venus is very questionable, and I would say it would be impossible. Okay? Now this scale is wrong. The scale of the orbital path is right, but of course the Earth is very large compared to the scale. It's just trying to show the point. And again, think of it this way. And I've used this analogy before, but if you're facing forward, you cannot see what's behind you, right? So when you're facing forward, you would represent the dot on this ball down here, okay? And when you're talking about hours after sunset or hours before sunrise, getting a line of sight towards Venus in the middle of the night, and yes, I would call 11:45 p.m. the middle of the night. You know, it's 15 minutes before midnight that we're talking about in this video. How much closer can you get to the middle of the night? And it's actually about 3.5 hours after sunset. You know, again, do the little demonstration that I just described with the pumpkin. If you think that you're going to continue seeing a little magic marker dot on the pumpkin after it's rotated beyond 90 degrees away from you, then, you know, you're retarded. I'm sorry to say. And or you're being disingenuous, because clearly you're not going to be able to see a dot on that pumpkin once that, you know, pumpkin has spun 90 degrees away from you and past that 90-degree mark. You have no hope of seeing it. And I would mention that if you were the little dot on the pumpkin, you would also not be able to see the observer that we're, you know, talking about here. So this is pretty basic, but it's simple geometry. You know, you can't see what's behind you even if you tilt your head up 90 degrees, which would sort of, you know, mesh with the globe Earth tilt misalignment to the 90 degrees off of the plane or whatever. But in terms of the numbers, how far is Venus from Earth? They say that the closest possible distance between Earth and Venus is 38 million kilometers. And the furthest Venus ever gets from the Earth is 261 million kilometers. Now, I don't have to look. I believe they say that Venus is just slightly smaller than the ball Earth. So I think they say that its diameter is like, what, 7,000 miles instead of 8? Let's just check. Venus diameter. Yeah, 7,500 miles. Okay, and now we got to convert kilometers to miles. So how many is 38 million kilometers? Let's see. Sorry, y'all. What did I say? 38 million? I guess we can just do 38. So it'd be let's do 38 million. Whatever. Not that good on the fly with math. So it's going to be 23,612,000 miles. So we'll just round it up and say 24 million miles to Venus at its closest, when it should technically not be lit by the sun, according to an observer on Earth. So just think about this for a minute. If you actually believe, and we'll forget about the alleged cycles of Venus relative to the position, you know, so either fully lit or no lit Venus, forget about that for a minute. Even at its closest, when it should not be lit at all, it would be a 7,500 mile diameter object over 23 million miles away. Okay, so if you believe that you can see with the naked eye an object that's 7,500 miles in diameter from 23 million miles away, that's frankly absurd. The human eye can only resolve certain angular sizes, and once an object is far removed from the eye, it becomes indistinguishable from everything else. And the way that light works, it would basically attenuate into the background radiation of hypothetical space millions of miles prior to hitting your eye on the Earth. Okay, so now that's Venus at its closest, but again, you would never see Venus when it's at its closest because it should be not lit at all. Okay, so that's a problem. Now, they say at its furthest, they say it's 261 million kilometers. So let's plug that in here. That is 162 million miles. So when Venus is lit, fully lit, on the opposite side of the sun, maybe I can get a better view of this diagram here, where we can see the whole darn thing. But you get what I'm saying. It would be beyond the top of the screen here. When Venus is fully lit, it would be behind the sun, aligned to the day side of Earth, 100% guaranteed. So you certainly would never get a line of sight towards Venus when it's fully lit at night. You'd be over here. So again, the target area that you could ever potentially see Venus would be, somewhere on the sides when it's either like a quarter lit Venus over here, half lit Venus over here, or the same thing on the other side up to, again, 25% of this circle on either side. Okay? But again, if it's half lit or a quarter lit or even 3/4 lit, then you're reducing the actual angular size of the object in terms of the light that's coming through space to get at you. Okay, so instead of a 7,500 mile diameter object, you're talking about, a 3,500 mile diameter object some hundreds of millions of miles away. Okay? So, just put this in perspective. Do you think that you could see a football field size object from 1,000,000 miles away, even if it was brilliantly lit? No, you could never see it because it's too damn far away. Okay? So when you couple these two things together, again, the pumpkin example that I gave you where, you're a little dot on the back of this ball, and yet somehow you're viewing Venus overhead at night or dozens of degrees over the horizon hours after sunset, that's a problem. It's a big problem. And furthermore, the nail in the coffin for Venus and the inner solar system being viewed at night or viewed at all is the fact that the globe earthers claim that Venus is 7,500 miles in diameter, at least 25 million miles away at its closest, when you'd never be able to see it in a million years at its closest because it shouldn't be lit according to your model. So, that's that. And, people say that this is an ignorant position to have and it doesn't prove anything, but I would submit that you're just not considering it properly or you're being purposefully obtuse. Okay, that's my position on it, and I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but this whole notion that people have seen Venus after sunset for years only proves my point further. Okay? Just because something's observed and you believe the Earth is a ball doesn't mean that all observations align to the Earth being a ball. Does that make sense? Okay? And in fact, when your observations misalign with the ball Earth model, that should be proof negative against your beliefs. However, it only emboldens your belief, which to me is a very amazing feedback loop of ignorance and arrogance. So, no offense, but that's how I see it. Okay, Carl Cox says, here's a question. This video, by using the phases of the moon, shows that the moon itself is a ball. Why then would you think that the Earth is flat? All other observable celestial bodies are spheres, but only our planet is flat? See, that statement right there proves that you haven't looked into this topic at all. Because what you'd understand, or what you should understand, is that the Earth, the physical plane of reality, is nothing like the lights in the sky. Okay? So even assuming, and I'll give this one to you for argument's sake, even assuming that the moon is indeed a sphere in the sky, does not necessarily prove that the Earth is also a sphere in the sky. Okay? The Earth is nothing like the moon, and the moon is nothing like the Earth. We've been conditioned to believe since we were very young that the moon proves the Earth is a ball, but like I told you in my response a couple hours ago, the analogy that I would use is that, pool balls are spherical, therefore pool tables must necessarily be spherical too. And so your response to that is that your position on this matter is that the pool balls are spherical and other pool balls are spherical as well. I applaud you for your willingness to die on this hill. However, since every bit of science shows that the Earth is a sphere, your ability to willfully ignore all of that is truly impressive. Seriously, it's like in your case puberty didn't take the first time, and you're too busy being a petulant little bitch to give it another try. So let me tell you, first of all, ad hominem attacks against me prove nothing about the shape of the Earth. I can promise you that. Okay? But your comment that all science, where are you getting that? Like, can you please cite one scientific experiment that proves the Earth has curvature? Can you cite one scientific experiment that proves the Earth is in just mind-boggling motion? Okay? And I would submit that you cannot, which is why you're resorting to ad hominem attacks against me personally. Okay? Which is pretty standard, typical stuff when it comes to globe earthers. Okay? It's nothing new. But let's delve into this a little bit. Okay? So let's look at world record for long distance landscape photography, pic de fin. Okay, so here we go. In this image here, sorry for if it's a little small for you guys, but this is, I don't know if it still is, but it was for a few years the longest uh, landscape photograph ever taken. And that what that means is that this mountain in the distance, Pic de Finisterraeus, is 273 miles away. Okay, 273 miles. Now, if the Earth is a ball, then it should curve downward away from this observer at an exponential inverse square rate beyond the point where the horizon is. Now, if you do the math on this, the base of this mountain range, 273 miles away, should vertically descend about 3 miles. Now, the thing is that this mountain is only 2.5 miles tall, so the very tip top of this mountain should be a half a mile below the horizon, assuming that the Earth is a ball. Okay? Unfortunately, the fact that we can see this mountain from 273 miles away from this elevation, if you do the trigonometry, it comes out to, again, a 3-mile vertical descent at that distance. You should not be able to see it. Okay? Now, the other portion of this, because we don't just live on a ball according to you, we live on a spinning ball that's orbiting the sun, that's orbiting the galaxy, that's flying through space. Okay? So supposedly we're told that the Earth spins 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, goes around the sun at 6,600 miles an hour, goes around the galaxy at about 483,000 miles an hour, goes through space with the galaxy at some millions of miles an hour. Okay, so supposedly we're spinning, orbiting again, and these are not, in linear fashion. These are contradictory orbits, and at times you would have major acceleration, not just to mention the angular acceleration that's necessarily built into traveling along a curved path. You should have multiple combinations of, sometimes the Earth is orbiting the sun while the sun is traveling at a 60-degree angle to that in one direction, and then sun would be traveling in the opposite direction. So there would be just all kinds of measurable acceleration. Now, if you can point to one single scientific proof, any experiment that shows that we are indeed traveling in some 5 different directions at once along curved paths while spinning and just mind-boggling speeds that you could never even comprehend, millions of miles an hour, or even 66,000 miles an hour, it's incomprehensible. It's beyond the scope of human achievement. Okay? And so for someone for your position to say that all of the scientific evidence proves the Earth is a spinning ball is absolutely absurd. It really is. It's absurd. All measurements taken prove that the Earth is in fact stationary and has no curvature. Now, in order for the Earth to be an overall sphere, you would necessarily have inverse square curvature. Now, what's interesting is that you mentioned me not making it through puberty, and I'm too busy being a petulant little bitch. But I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. However, so if we're going to take it back to school, do you remember ever learning in school what the Earth curvature formula should be? In all of your years in school, did they ever teach you just exactly how curved the Earth is? And I'll tell you, if you ask 100 globe Earth believers that have never looked into flat Earth, but they vehemently defend the globe, 100 of them will tell you that they've never heard of such an equation in school. And I'll tell you that the equation is 8 inches per mile squared. That's where you get this, where'd it go? Yeah, that's where you get the calculations for this Australia. It should vertically descend at 8 inches per mile squared. It's a pretty basic geometry. Okay, but you're never going to learn that in school. It is indeed flat earthers who have brought this equation to public light. Now, I have seen some articles in the past where mathematics professors were asked, what is the curvature formula of the Earth? And in many, many cases, not just one or two, but several cases, professors would tell these people online that it was 8 inches per mile. Okay? But that's wrong. That's way wrong. That's all kinds of wrong. That's describing a slope or a ramp. It's not describing an inverse square curve, which the globe necessarily should be if it's a near perfect sphere. Okay, so not only do we not learn what the curvature formula is in school, but we're sort of led to believe that even though the Earth is spinning and orbiting around multiple curved paths in multiple directions simultaneously, we don't notice it because we only notice acceleration. Okay, and that's a huge cop out. I mean, it really is, because again, if an object is traveling along a curve, it's necessarily experiencing acceleration, and that would be angular acceleration, and that manifests in the physical reality as centrifugal force, and there is none. Now, furthermore, if you're talking about multiple, often conflicting orbital paths, you would have situations where the acceleration would be greater at times and less at times, which would all translate to measurable acceleration here in reality. The fact of the matter is, any sort of test that you can possibly do to measure for this necessary acceleration on your hypothetical ridiculous ball comes back with results that prove conclusively in all sorts of fields of study that the Earth is in fact stationary. Now, as much as this conflicts with the programming that we were all very much subjected to as little kids, and certainly no acceleration of the Earth whatsoever. Okay, and this goes pretty deep. I mean, it goes all the way into things like astronomy, but we'll end this comment and get to some other ones because I could go on for days. I mean, but it is, of course, just so very typical that when I basically respond to your question and say, read my response. Pool balls are spherical, therefore pool tables must necessarily be spherical too. Is that your position? The moon is indeed a sphere. How does that translate to proof of Earth curvature? And your answer to that question was that I didn't make it through puberty and I'm a petulant little bitch. So way to science, bruh. Way to science. I'll tell you what, you really are one of the best scientists in the world. Great. Thanks, Nicholas Brown. Appreciate that, man. Response to the Mount Rushmore video from yesterday. Okay, Oscar Sanchez. I wonder if he's related to Dirty Sanchez. Flat earthers that are adults are too late to save. Hopefully we don't allow this to happen to children, where credible sources do not have to be an obligation in our research. So this is in response to a real short video with Elon Musk on the Joe Rogan show, and I've just got to hear Elon say this one more time. It's so funny the way he says this. The Earth is a giant ball of lava, molten lava with a thin crust. It's so much funnier when he says it. So damn ads. Skip this.
Like the surface, this thin crust lava.
Earth is deep, it gets hot.
Here we go.
I wouldn't recommend drilling super far down.
Yeah,
like,
but you get
Earth
real
is
deep, it gets hot.
What the crap? What just happened?
Right? Yeah.
Earth is a giant ball of lava with a thin crust on the top, which we think of as like the surface.
The Earth is a giant ball of lava. That's just so funny the way he says that. I'm sorry, not to make fun of the way that somebody talks, but that's just freaking hilarious. So, okay, so it was in response to this video. He's saying that flat earthers are too late to save. Hopefully we don't allow this to happen to children, where credible sources do not have to be an obligation in our research. So, if you can't see that children are indoctrinated at a very young age, systemically by this system that we live in, into believing that the Earth is a spinning ball, whether it's true or not, you must surely admit that children are trained to believe that the Earth is a ball at a very young age. Now, psychologically, when people are in their formative years, elementary school and younger, the ideas that adults pass on to us really are ingrained into our subconscious, into our psyche. And I think that that's not by mistake. In fact, I'm sure of it. I'm sure that the reason that they attack children with ball earth indoctrination is because, well, first of all, children are pretty gullible. They'll believe, well, in Santa Claus and anything that grown-ups tell them about the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny, no matter how ridiculous it is. Kids are gullible, okay? And I'm not saying that people are, intentionally deceiving their children, because they were brought up in this system as children as well. But the fact is that children are certainly taught to believe in the spinning ball Earth, regardless of whether or not it's true. So basically, I agree with your statement that we don't allow this to happen to children, but you're 100%, 180 degrees in the wrong. Okay? Because, see, here's the thing, man. As a regular person, I too was reared in the indoctrination system into believing in a spinning ball Earth. Okay, just like everybody else. The thing is, as a flat Earth proponent, I have also looked at this other hypothesis, which happens to be the truth. Okay, now it's not something that happens to anyone just overnight in most cases. It does take a lot of introspection and soul searching and revisiting a lot of things that we just assume to be true because, well, everybody knows that the Earth is a spinning ball, so I too must assume that it's true. Now, when you go back and revisit this topic as a rational adult, as opposed to a gullible little child, you will find that there certainly is something to this, and in fact, it is indeed the very obvious and plain truth. Okay, it's very obvious once you get this. So again, and the two things are, forget the moon, forget Venus, forget all that, but the two main things are the Earth does not have curvature necessary to result in a sphere, and it is not in any sort of motion whatsoever. Not orbital motion, not rotational motion, not galactic motion, none of that. And, I will stand by that until you provide a single shred of evidence to prove otherwise. Right, so, Oscar Sanchez on the same video. Troll much? Elon Musk is making contributions to our fundamental pools of knowledge and aiding in the advancement of technology. I find him to be a credible source as opposed to this YouTube video you're watching now, where any opposing arguments are filtered in the comments section. These beliefs will cause you to remain stagnant. Well, what a mouthful. Okay, so I don't even know how to respond to that. Elon Musk is making contributions to our fundamental pools of knowledge. No, I would say that Elon Musk is actively faking space, okay? And maybe he's not even in on it, because I don't think he's ever been in a rocket ship, okay? And we know that, astronauts are pretty much 99% of the time Freemasons and necessarily liars, okay? But to say that Elon Musk is adding, contributing to our fundamental pools of knowledge, well, okay, but wait a minute. What does that have to do with the Earth being a spinning ball? Okay, because as a flat earther, as a scientific process of inquiry, you should be going out there performing physics and geometry. Okay? And physics, by the way, is studies of bodies in motion and its fundamental level. And geometry literally means measure the Earth. Geometry, measure the Earth. Okay, so talking about Elon Musk, okay, so maybe I'm the one that put the video out. It's just a little 5-minute video. I thought it was hilarious the way. Can we watch? Let's watch it again. Giant ball of lava. I gotta hear it again. Hold on. It's a giant ball of lava. Fucking retard. Come on, Ed. No, we gotta skip the ad again. I just gotta hear it. It's hilarious. Come on, Joe Rogan.
I wouldn't recommend drilling super far down.
Yeah, like, but you get Earth real deep. It gets hot, right?
Why does it keep doing that?
Earth is a giant ball of lava.
The Earth is a giant ball of lava. I don't know why that's so funny, the way that he says that and the face that he makes, but it's just I could watch it 100 times and I will still die laughing every time. So yeah, I mean, whether Elon Musk is in fact making legitimate contributions to our fundamental pools of knowledge, lots of word salad there. Whether or not that's true, that in no way proves whether or not the Earth is a spinning ball. So basically, you're just trying to reinforce your beliefs by putting people like this on a pedestal and basically saying that we lowly peasant class can't even question what this man's doing because he's such a beacon of he's a beacon of magnanimity. He's such a magnanimous science buff, right? Whatever, man. One more from Oscar Sanchez. People who are flat earthers are not uneducated, just miseducated. All I can say is make sure that you ask the questions, quote, are my sources credible? Or are this particular party makes something we refer to in psychology as the argument of ignorance? Well, I don't know what sources you're referring to there, Oscar Sanchez, but my eyeballs and my brain are my sources, okay? I don't need any Ivy League degree-toting monkey parrot to tell me what I'm supposed to believe. I will go out and perform physics and geometry and maybe just make some common sense observations as well in order to either prove or disprove whether or not the Earth is a spinning ball in the fictional fantasy of outer space. Okay? And my tell me, and again, that's my eyeballs and my brain and my common sense as a rational human being, my sources are very sound, sir. Very sound indeed. And I don't care how many degrees your sources have. If they're reading science textbooks, especially theoretical astrophysics textbooks, and regurgitating what they read in those books, then they are not a good source of information because they're not trusting their own damn eyes and brains and common sense. Okay? So I don't know who your sources are, but my sources are within me, right? And I think that's one of the most liberating facts about coming over to the flat earth side is you don't have to take anyone's word for anything. It gives you this sort of epiphany that, well, wait a minute, is it possible that I was lied to about the ball? Well, let's look into that. Let's give that a rational, skeptical, revisiting, because we haven't done that as adults in most cases. Most cases, you learn about the spinning ball Earth in school, you go on believing it your whole life, and anyone who questions that belief is automatically ostracized, ridiculed, and labeled as a kook. But that is not science. That is quite the opposite of science, in fact. And what the flat earthers are doing is very much akin to science and the zetetic process, which means basically to observe the world around us and come to our own conclusions, not just listen to a bunch of ignorant monkey parrots, like those Ivy Leaguers, man. Neil deGrasse, Bill Nye the Science Guy, Professor, what the hell was his name? I can't even think of his name anymore. The one I debated way back in 2015. What the hell was that guy's name? Anyway. Roy Ayers, you make some great points. Haven't thought about. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, Mount Rushmore, definitely interesting. Shmuel Cohen, what the hell happened to you, Morgile? Get off the spank? I don't know what that means. Spank? I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'm off the spank, man. Okay. QA, nice to have you back, Morgile. Appreciate it. Side note, funny how much photographic evidence of Mount Rushmore being constructed than we do of the ISS or old Skylab supposedly being constructed. Yeah, the ISS and NASA and all of their mobiles. Yeah, I know, right? Okay. Thundermutt 6, Volume 2, huh? Yeah. I don't want to get the authorities after me, so I'm not even going to touch that one. Khalifa Bakwane, I'm not sure how to say that name. Sorry, man. Khalifa. Lasertech, watch the film Richie Rich. So we're talking about Mount Rushmore. Yeah, who knows, man? Who knows how they did it? But I just find it hard to believe they did it with dynamite, chisels, and 100 dudes, right? Goat's milk. So I'm going to skip over these Mount Rushmores. I appreciate the comments, and I did try to respond to some of them and thumb them up when I could, but I'm really trying to focus on flat Earth for this one, and I'll try to pop back into the comments of the Mount Rushmore video later on. Yeah, they ran out of money, couldn't finish it. Right, we're in the middle of the Great Demon Possession. That's funny. Wow, a lot of comments on the Mount Rushmore stuff. Thank you guys. I do appreciate it. I'm not trying to just snub you guys. I just wanted to keep this live stream focused on flat Earth responses because, it's been a while, and I just see a lot of the same vitriol and just ignorant sort of comments that we've covered already, just all the time in rapid succession. And hopefully this will thwart some of that and maybe get some people thinking for themselves instead of coming to me for all the answers or going to their degree-toting monkey parrots for the answers. Okay? So Pedro Gonzalez says, "We don't like it, please stop." Oh, well, thanks for the comment, man. I appreciate that. If you don't like it and you comment on the video, you're only helping the algorithms to boost it, although I don't think you really have to worry about that much in my case. GT says, "This week on Comedy Hour." Well, that's a very astute scientific observation, sir. Let's see here. Mag Cynic says, "Props on you for trying to take one of the biggest proofs of a round Earth and trying to twist it into the proof of a flat Earth. You absolutely failed miserably, but at least you tried." Okay, so this has to do with Polaris, and actually that's very convenient because I was going to touch on Polaris for the lack of motion through space, but since you brought it up, I will definitely touch on that. So Polaris is a huge, huge problem for the baller theory, duder. Huge problem. And, I would respond to your specific point or your specific objection to my logic or to my evidence, but basically telling me that I failed miserably, what, do I have to do the whole video over again? Because you're not being very specific. But let's put it this way, man. According to all accounts, throughout history, Polaris has been the central star in the north. Okay, all of the other stars go around Polaris concentrically, and indeed, Polaris does make a very minute circle throughout the 24-hour period. Very minute, hardly moves an inch, and in fact, if you position a telescope placed at Polaris, you can leave that telescope there forever, and it will remain fixed on Polaris as long as you're zoomed out enough to encapsulate its entire arc through space or through fake space. Okay. Now here's the thing, though. Mainstream theoretical globe Earth science claims that the Earth is, yes, indeed, spinning on its axis, but that axis is also allegedly wobbling through space once every 26,000 years. Okay, so that's a very long time. And according to globe Earth physics, they say that we will indeed have a new North Star some 6,000 years in the future, and perhaps we had a different North Star some 6,000 years in the past. That's essentially what they say. So they certainly put the sort of goalpost out as far to where nobody living has any recollection of what happened 6,000 years ago for sure, and nobody living will be around in 6,000 years, so it falls into the category of typical globe Earth shenanigans where it's completely non-demonstrable, non-falsifiable, non-testable conjecture. Okay? Now, here's the thing, though. If what they're saying is true, and the Earth does have this precession cycle or wobbling cycle over 26,000 years, that means it should be wobbling through this precession about 1 degree every 72 years. Okay, now that doesn't sound like much, but 1 degree in arc minutes of this wobble, and again, our axis is nearly perfectly aligned with Polaris in your model. Now, if the axis is wobbling 1 degree over 72 years, then our axis should misalign to Polaris very frequently. In fact, even over our lifetimes, say 18 years or over 36 years, it should have precessed 1/4 of a degree or 1/2 a degree, respectively. And the fact of the matter is, Polaris has always been the central North Star, according to every history book, which maybe we can question those as well. But as it stands, there is no sort of evidence to suggest that there was anything but Polaris aligned to our axis of rotation in your model. Now, what does this prove? Well, it completely debunks the globe Earth model because we should observe new North Stars every 50 to 100 years at the most. Certainly over all of recorded history, there should have been, well, even, according to the mainstream narrative, I believe it was Hipparchus and Ptolemy, who came up with the observation of the precession of the equinoxes. And over that time period, about 2,000 years, there have been 0 degrees of measured precession, according to Polaris. 0 degrees, and there should have been something like 26 degrees of precession. So, that's one profound point about Polaris and how it does not jive with the ball-Earth model. And I actually mentioned several other things in that video, but of course, I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. You said I just failed miserably, but you failed to cite any example, give any sort of evidence, which is typical for globe Earth people, right? So we'll go on to the next one, and let me check in on the chat, make sure everybody's still here, make sure that you can hear me, because I don't want to be talking to nobody. Hey, Glaucoma, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that, man. God bless you. Yeah, so if you guys could just let me know that you can hear me okay, and hey, Michael Jones, it looks like that's a thumbs up. Okay, so let's go back to the comments, because this is just so much fun. Stephen Coles, well, I'm educated now on what not to watch and what not to listen to. You are a numpty. A numpty? I can honestly say I've never heard before. Man, leave it to Globe Earth Trolls to come up with some good ones. So let's see, what is a numpty? Define, I just gotta know, man. Define numpty. Informal British. Well, no wonder. You British people have the strangest words for everything. I tell you. Sometimes I get confused listening or watching British movies because they're talking about Moppets on the Mups or something. I don't even know. So a stupid or ineffectual person. Confused numpties who have a little idea of what they're talking about. So it is a very creative ad hominem, but an ad hominem nonetheless. And I must say, yet again, ad hominems, Sir Stephen Coles IV, fail to prove Earth curvature, axial rotation, or orbital motion. Punk Fingerboard says troll. Okay, thanks for the comment, Punk. Chris Adler says, Nutter alert, not the wife but the man. She seems to know him well. Well, thanks, Chris Adler. That's very nice of you. Flat Earth equals mental defeat. You will amount to nothing. Well, I think, Chris, we're all eventually going to amount to nothing. Everybody dies. We're all just going to be a pile of dirt one day. And I know that's very, heartening and everything, or enlightening. But yeah, we will all amount to nothing. But I would say that standing up for what we know to be right and true is about the best thing that we can do here in this world, especially when we know that it's going to bring us negative consequences. So I will stand up for what I know to be right and true, even if you call me a mental defect all day long for the rest of your short life. Itay Marlov says, I have 2 things to tell you, dear maker of that video, and this is into the Flat Earth short and sweet, one of those. 1, all of the pictures that shows the full moon during the day are made by Photoshop. It's not possible. Oh, really? 2, if the Earth was really flat, as that theory says, every part of the flat Earth, wherever it is in the Earth's atmosphere, so if the flat Earth theory was right, nights aren't supposed to be existed at all anywhere. Oh, God. Really? Okay, so we'll go back to 1, and then we'll touch on the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I've heard different variations of that same point, but that is the most poorly spoken and ridiculous one of all, I'll tell you. Okay, so you say that all the pictures that show the full moon during the day are made by Photoshop. It's not possible? Dude, seriously? You're going to take that position because if you're proven wrong, does that mean you will concede to my point? Because again, this isn't to prove flat Earth. This is to debunk the ball Earth concept. Okay? And indeed, I agree with you. We should not be able to see the full moon during broad daylight. This would be akin to seeing the sun in the middle of the night. So I agree with you there, but no, it was not made by Photoshop. I've seen full moons overhead, rising and setting, and going overhead during the middle of the day my entire life. Doesn't happen every month, doesn't even happen every 3 months, but it does happen occasionally, and in fact, it just happened the other day, about 4 or 5 days ago when you made that post, maybe a few days before you made it. That's crazy. So if you say the full moon during the day is impossible, if your position there is proven to be wrong, will you then concede that the ball Earth model fails to account for observable reality? Or will you just continue on like you do with number 2? So in number 2, again, you say, if the Earth was really flat, as that theory says, every part of the flat Earth, wherever it is in the Earth's atmosphere. So if the flat Earth theory was right, aren't supposed to be existed at all. Oh, was right, then nights aren't supposed to be existed at all in anywhere. Now, I will, let me take back what I said. It seems like maybe English is not your first language, and if that's the case, I apologize for my snarky comment before. Your English is far better than my Russian or whatever, whatever language that you speak. But, so what you're saying is that people who know that the Earth is flat, we had not considered this little thing called day and night. So you actually believe that after 4 or 5 years of flat earthers disproving the globe and proving that the Earth is a stationary plane, you actually think that we had not considered that there is this phenomenon known as day and night here in reality, and you're the first one in years to come up with this observation of day and its opposite, night? Really? Here's the thing, man. According to your model, where the sun is some 93 million miles away and some 893,000 miles in diameter object, agreed, if that were the case and the Earth were somehow flat in your ridiculous model, then you're absolutely right. There would be no day and night. However, in reality, the sun is much smaller and closer, and it only lights up a regional area at once. Furthermore, the atmosphere itself behaves as a sort of a lens. It magnifies light, it refracts light, it diffuses light. There's all sorts of things that the atmosphere basically, it affects the inbound light from the sun. It causes it to certainly not travel in straight lines. And I guess I had better show you a demonstration of this, because you'll call me a liar if I don't, but light absolutely does not always travel in straight lines, especially when traveling through varying density and temperature media. So let's do a quick YouTube search for sugar water laser. And here we go.
Harry!
Damn ass, I'll tell you.
Come on back, peaceful.
In this very beautiful experiment, you can actually see light bend as the density increases. You need a fish tank, 250 grams of sugar, put 3 liters of water in a fish tank, about half.
Oh, and I will say that these scientists that did this demonstration are not flat earthers. Okay, so just so you know, this isn't any sort of bias or skewed sort of demonstration. This is just a demonstration of light bending through varying density gradients.
Full and add 250 grams of sugar. Please do not stir the mixture. Leave it like this for about 24 to 48 hours. Let the sugar dissolve on itself. And as this happens, there would be a density gradient. The water at the lower level of the fish tank would be slightly denser. Now shine a laser beam, and as you bring it lower down, the light will bend. You see, the light is bending and becomes straighter and straighter. If you bring it down, the light bends because of the density of the sugar solution is higher below. And the bending of the light can be seen more clearly in a dark room. You can see as you bring the laser beam lower down, the light would slowly bend because of the concentration gradient.
All right, there you go. So basically, and this bendy light is a phenomenon. It's, well, refraction is what it is, but it is bendy light, in a nutshell. Has caused a lot of misunderstandings throughout history, starting with Eratosthenes and his little demonstration or so-called experiment, all the way to the observation of ships appearing to go over the curved horizon. This all has to do with the assumption, going up even until I think it was the 1500s or the 1600s, it was assumed by science that light always travels in rectilinear straight line paths. Okay, now that was all completely debunked again, I think it was the mid 1600s or so when the concept or the phenomenon of light refraction was acknowledged by science. Okay, so when you apply refraction and the different functions of the atmosphere, essentially behaving as a lens on the macro level as well on the subjective micro level to the eye of the beholder, the atmosphere is behaving as a convex lens that follows you around wherever you go. That's why we see blue sky in all directions up and around us. That's why the clouds that are, say, 20 miles in the distance appear to be very near the horizon, even though they're just as high above your head as the clouds that are, over your head. It is perspective and refraction, combined together that causes the illusion of clouds to drop closer to the horizon as they gain distance from you. It's the same exact thing that causes ships to appear to go over a curve. Again, that's perspective and refraction. And it is, the light from the sun is basically playing tricks on us in a way because we tend to assume that light only ever travels in straight lines, and that simply isn't the case. So your concept or your argument that flat Earth should not have day and night, well, first of all, it's a non-issue, because if you measure the Earth for curvature, there is none. If you measure the Earth for motion, there also is none. So whatever's going on with the lights in the sky and day and night, there must be some rational explanation other than the spinning ball nonsense. Okay? So the light from the sun and day and night really don't prove anything about the physical geometry or the physics, the nature of the Earth. The lights in the sky, again, are nothing akin to the Earth. Even if all of the little lights in the sky happen to be spherical objects, which does remain to be seen, but even if they are, it doesn't necessarily make the Earth a sphere as well. Okay? So hopefully covered that thoroughly enough. And let's see, how long? Let me check on you guys. Hey, Karen B, what's up, girl? Tinfoil Hatter. Yeah, thanks for deleting that one. Wow. So you guys doing okay? Been almost an hour. You guys want me to keep going, or you getting tired of my rantings, or what? Let me know, because I'll keep going if you want me to for a while longer. I'm really having fun with this. It is fun to destroy the trolls. Matthew C4, what's up, everybody? The triangle is proof of perspective. A few nights ago, the moon stood still, huh? For how long, I wonder? Okay, so I guess I'll keep going. Y'all just let me know in the comments if you just get so tired of me you just can't stand it anymore. And okay, you can hear me, audio fine. It's a little low, but fine. Okay, well, thanks for letting me know. Let me try to turn my mic up. And I guess I'll probably be way too loud for everybody else, but I will try to mic up a bit here. Hang on. Bear with me, people. Okay, heard you guys. I appreciate that. Yeah. All right. I'll definitely keep going. Where's my sound at? There it is. Okay. Oh, well, that is not my speakers and system sounds. I got to go into device manager. I hate Windows 10. I'm still getting used to it. Sorry, y'all. We'll try to we'll try to mic up a little bit if I possibly can. Oh, of course, I don't think the levels are available in the control panel, are they? Let's see. No, it's not going to let me do that, motherfucker. All right, let me do this a different way. Good God. I might just have to nix the... Oh, wait, here we go. Recording. There it is. Check, check. That's all the way up. If I can turn the boost up, maybe that'll help. Check, check. Oh, that's probably way loud, huh? Is that way loud, guys, or is that better? So I'll give it a second to let me close this out because this computer has very low RAM. Let me know if that's better, if I'm way too just obnoxiously loud now or what. We Defoe, no, you're not a shill, bruh. Alright, Mike Jones. At first I thought you were talking about Willem Dafoe was a shill. I was like, wait, Willem Dafoe, really? So just, yeah, I'm waiting for confirmation if I'm too loud or if that's better, and I will carry on then. I delay, so I will wait patiently for that and carry on. Yeah, I know. I kept Windows 7 until just recently, or crapped out. So hopefully if I can get that back up and running, I'll still have Windows 7 on that. But yeah, I really loved it. So I was running 8 gigs of RAM on that with Windows 10. Had just plenty of memory. This one I think has 3 gigs of RAM with Windows 10, and it bogs down the memory just sitting there looking pretty. So yeah, let me know if the audio sounds better. Am I way too loud? I guess you can turn me down better than some people can turn me up. So I'll just have to assume that this is better and carry on, because I don't want to leave you guys sitting there in the lurch for too long. And we'll get back to the comments. So he says, watch Simon Dan. He debunked your bullshit very easy and without insults, as you pathetic snowflake wish. Oh, wow. So you know what? I was thinking about doing this, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. With that, Simon Dan recently made a response to actually a comment that I've already responded to, the Midnight Venus one, I believe. But let's go ahead and see the Simon Dan's video and see if he debunked my bullshit very easily or if it was just nonsense. So let's see here. Simon Dan. There he is. A cheeky little monkey. Okay, so let's see here. Where is he? And I think, I believe that you guys can indeed hear the audio coming from the video. If you could let me know, because I believe that's the case, that you should be able to hear it, which I did not know yesterday when I did my live stream, but when I went back through it to put cards in for John Levy's channel, I heard the portion where I played his video. It actually came to the video. So hopefully you guys can, in fact, hear what Lyman Dan is saying. So if you could let me know. Too loud. Turn it down, Jimmy. Sorry, man. I had people complaining it was too low, and I'd rather be too loud because you can turn me down, although they may not be able to turn me up. So let me start this video from Simon Dan, and let me find it first. Here it is. Yeah. Oh, no, it wasn't the one. It was the one about the moon. Okay, so not the one about Venus. So that's even better, because I haven't really touched on that today. And just, y'all let me know if you can, in fact, hear this before we get too far with it.
Before we begin today...
So yeah, hear Lyman Dan there. Okay, sounds okay. Simon Dan, indeed, yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to assume here for a minute that y'all can hear that portion of the video. And I'll check back in a minute and just make sure that you can. Right, so here we go.
I'm delighted to announce that today's video is brought to you by Dashlane.
Degree per hour drift.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. And I guess I could cover that one too, my thoughts on that. But that isn't a particular topic, so we'll just continue.
Last time he was on the channel, he was making tragic mistakes regarding Venus.
Now, if you look at online sources, they'll say that Venus actually set at 11, but clearly this thing had another good at least half hour, 45 minutes before it would have set behind the horizon here.
Okay, I'll check an online source. Oh, look. For Michigan, the heliocentric model says that on the 16th of June 2018, Venus will set at 11 p.m. So that means that the photo taken...
Okay. So he said, this is a very, very important point to make. He says that the heliocentric model that Venus should set at 11:45 p.m. that day. But in fact, that is not true at all. Observation says that Venus should set at 11 that day because there are recurring patterns in the heavens, and it has nothing to do with the model. It has to do with observation. And he's basically a straw man or like a red herring argument against my point, which basically is not germane to the point at all. I was a little bit unsure about where Venus was supposed to set that night, and there are, basically, if you take three different locations, like I think one was Deltona, one was another D city, Des Moines or something, but three different locations had varying set times for Venus. I would assume that has elevation and topography. So like if you're in a valley, Venus is going to set way earlier than if you're on the top of a mountain, right? And so really not germane to the point at all. He's just trying to add confusion to this and try to basically call me out on something that isn't even relevant at all. He's finding little minor faults or really semantical arguments against what I'm saying as opposed to actually the argument itself, and that is just so very typical of people like Simon Dan, because the average viewer is going to see that and say, oh, he's just kicking the Morgile's ass, when really all he's doing is setting up a straw man and basically burning that effigy that has nothing to do with the point.
Is pretty much what you'd expect. This time, however, he's taking on the moon and how it is impossible. Boy, oh boy, he learns.
And no, I never said the moon was impossible. I said, just like the Globe Earther did a few comments back, that baller theory, you should not be able to see the full moon during broad daylight, certainly not many degrees over the horizon, certainly not directly over. And yet, observation shows us that you can often, many, many times throughout my life, see indeed, in fact, just that, the moon fully lit during broad daylight. Okay, this would be akin to seeing what's behind you while you're facing forward. It's never going to happen. This would be akin to seeing the sun overhead in the middle of the night. It's never going to happen according to the baller theory. And yet, he basically totally takes my words out of context and says that I said the moon was impossible, which clearly that's not the point.
Hello all and welcome to another episode of Tinfoil Tuesday with me, Simon Dan. Thank you very much for joining me. Yes, the Morgile is back, but we must remember that last time he didn't take my original video very well. The problem with people trying to debunk the heliocentric model is that people don't fully understand.
Oh, come on now. Really? Let me check in on the stream, make sure we're still live, y'all. Don't know what happened to this. So I guess we have a stream still? What do we got going on here? Good God, man. Not hearing anything here. Did we lose stream? That's the question. Okay, sounds okay. Simon Dan, indeed, yeah. Okay. So, sorry guys, I'm just here for a minute that y'all can hear the video, and I'll check back in a minute and just make sure that you can. Right, so here we go.
I'm delighted to announce.
Okay, so you can hear that. That's good.
Today's video
is behind the attack. Other than, again, he has the programming that all gullible toddlers were subjected to in their formative years to back up his position, but not evidence, not physics. It's just a very subtle form of ad hominem, just like we always see from globetards.
Oh, okay. So enlighten man, grace us with your infinite knowledge about the.
Oh, and one thing I did notice is on this video, he actually upped my voice a half second, so it makes me, I guess he feels threatened by my baritone voice, because, well, he sounds like a pipsqueak. No, I'm just kidding, Dan, you got a great voice. But scale mine up a half semitone, just curious.
Heliocentric model and all of your evidence for it. Please do. I really can't wait to see this.
So am I going to do anything different this time? Nope.
Not going to do anything different this time. He's going to prove nothing, set up just completely non-germane, straw man, red herring arguments against what I'm saying, and that's what he does best.
John the Morgile here, checking in a new Flat Earth video for you. Hope you enjoy it. In this video, we're going over a single point which completely refutes the globe Earth theory, and we'll cover the most common rebuttal to this point. Depending on how you guys like them, planning to do a series of these where we'll just cover a single point, short and sweet, aiming for about 10 to 15 minute videos. So right into it, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay, here we go.
While there are certainly details of the flat Earth model which need to...
So again, diagram, I'm glad this came up because this is that same Picta Fenestralius, beyondhorizons.eu, the world record for long distance photography. Again, 273 miles away. The mountain in the distance is only 2.5 miles tall, and according to the sphere-Earth trigonometry, that peak should be a half a mile below the horizon, yet we can clearly see the entire mountain range, completely demolishing any sort of concept that the Earth might act sphere, but he just brushes right past that, doesn't even respond to it, of course.
To be addressed and ironed out.
Yes, pretty much, but at least you acknowledge it, hey.
The simple fact is that the Earth is very obviously flat and motionless, with or without a model which explains all that.
Okay, and here's a profile view of that, it's not view, but a profile diagram of that same shot that we just looked at. And I know you longtime subscribers have seen this image many times before, but again, if you trigonometry, the observer taking the picture that would be starting on the left was 1.75 miles in altitude, which means their horizon, according to the ball, would be 117.8 miles away. The fuck, man. Okay, so we are reconnected again. This is just out of control, man. Let's make sure I'm still live here. The average viewer is going to see that and say, "Oh, he's just kicking the Morgile's ass," when really all he's doing. I'm not sure if we're still live or what. Sorry, y'all. Technical difficulties here. Encoding overloaded. Consider turning down video settings using a faster speed. Well, how do I adjust my connection speed, OBS? Let's see. Yeah, sorry, I'm sitting here troubleshooting, guys. Out of my video stream here, I don't know why. Again, I am connected by Ethernet, so it shouldn't be doing this, but anyway. So, okay, so we're supposed to take this picture as proof of the Earth's sphericity when we can use our own eyes and brains and to completely, very simply measure the Earth for curvature. That would be performing basic And so you're going to trump our own senses by what your sources tell you, even though your sources are known liars, basically part of a government that is designed to keep us stupid and subservient. Not to mention, of course, NASA was basically founded, or NASA was incorporated with literal Nazis from Operation Paperclip. And whatever your views on the Nazis are, I'm not gonna get it. But the American people's views on the Nazis during the late 50s and early 60s, when these guys were brought in, very, very negative. Okay, so at the very least, again, this is regardless of your view on the Nazis, NASA was being deceptive by basically supplanting Nazi scientists into the upper echelons of fledgling NASA. Okay, so one thing that we do know about the Nazis, whether or not you know about them, was that they were masters of propaganda. Okay, and so the long and short of it is, NASA on the surface is a exploration agency, only concerned with science and scientific endeavors and bettering humankind. However, when it comes right down to it, they are in fact a propaganda agency designed to control our minds, like any and all government necessarily is. Again, etymologically, if you break down the word government, it literally translates to control. Government, control of the mind. Okay, so, but yeah, we're supposed to take this composite image, which is clearly fake because, you know, go up and I wish I could pull up some more videos, but I'm not even going to bother. If you look at mainstream videos of high-altitude weather balloon footage, for example, take, for example, the Felix Baumgartner Red Bull jump a few years back. They use a fisheye camera to create the illusion of this sort of curvature of the Earth. But when independent people, non-biased people, send other balloons with non-fisheye lenses, consistently come back with images that show that there is no such curvature that is purported by these main endeavors like the Red Bull jump. Okay, so if the curvature doesn't exist, but these pictures do, well, what does that tell you about NASA? It tells you that they're lying, and they were definitely set up to deceive people from the very get-go. Okay.
While the world is similarly without curvature or motion, such a claim will certainly seem extremely ridiculous to any normal person who's never considered of a fixed planar world, primarily because we've all been thoroughly conditioned into the steadfast belief that the world is a spinning space.
No, we have been taught, not conditioned.
So wait a minute. So you're telling me that we were taught that the Earth is a spinning ball in outer space when we were gullible children? Okay, that's not conditioning. Whether it's true or not, we are conditioned into memorizing the ABCs. That's conditioning, and the ABCs are certainly true conditioning. Whether or not the Earth is a ball, children are conditioned into believing it. And in fact, I remember when I was very young, the first time I was told that the Earth was ridiculous, and I protested against it at first. But when you're dealing with authority figures and adults as a young child, you're going to succumb to their influence the way that it is. And for you to sit there and say that it isn't conditioning proves that you are going to defend your position whether or not you're in the right. That's what it is to me.
It's called an education, and in getting one, you are at the end of a 400-year journey, knowledge about the natural world.
Okay, a 400-year journey about the knowledge of the natural world. But, Mr. Dan, when we measure...
Now, it's believed that the circular objects in the sky are extremely distant and very large objects, although nothing could be further from the truth.
Absurd statement. So it's far from the truth because you say it is.
No, it's not because that I say that it is. It's because I have revisited this topic as a rational adult, and I've come to this conclusion based on common sense observation and physics. Okay, we are led to believe as youngsters that the objects in the sky are spherical objects. Therefore, the Earth must also be a spherical object. It's a logical fallacy, and just skip past it, man. I'd have to back it up to hear exactly what you were saying, but it's a non-issue. It's not germane to the full moon during broad daylight point at all. So we'll just blow past it.
No.
The moon is a fascinating example of these objects for many reasons, but for the purpose of this video, it's an excellent reminder of just how wrong the ball Earth theory actually is.
You said that about you. Now that one didn't end very well for you, did it?
In the past few
What, because you said that it didn't? Oh my goodness.
weeks, from people have contacted me about one point in particular, which I'm happy to say that I came up with on my own accord.
Of course you did, the Morgul.
While it is satisfying to stumble upon an original ball Earth debunk, it can be and nobody else seems to be talking about it.
Probably because it's a load of rubbish.
Oh, that's very scientific of you there, Lyman Dan.
This is exactly why the people I just mentioned had contacted me. According to them, the point that I will describe here in a moment seems very straightforward and simple once you get it, yet for some reason none of the high-profile flat earthers are discussing it.
More ad hominem. I'll tell you, man. Just make fun of flat earthers for 15-20 minutes and you've debunked them. I mean, it really is.
That's like saying the best smelling portaloo.
It's like saying the No, I'm not
Why
gonna
is
say
it, I've been asked, that a point so easily verifiable and observable by anyone who cares to look in the quote-unquote mainstream flat Earth discussions?
Maybe because it's even more than the usual bunk they talk about.
More ad hominem.
To be honest, I really don't have an answer. Either it's more complex than I think and don't get it, or perhaps it's so simple that others in the flat Earth community think there must be something wrong with my logic here. So let me go over the proof, and I'll let you decide.
Sounds fair enough.
We're going to humor the globe Earth theory here for this particular point in order to completely debunk in one fell swoop. Now, many people on the other side of this argument scoff at this sort of tactic, as it doesn't prove the Earth is emotional, it debunks the globe. However, I would argue that in debunking the ball Earth theory, we provide an even more stable foundation for the argument for a flat Earth.
Now this is the holy grail for flat Earth YouTubers, debunking the globe and proving a flat Earth in one go. Has he done the impossible?
So, according to theory, the moon's monthly phase cycle is caused by the variant positional relationship between the Earth, the moon, and the sun. It's claimed that Earth orbits the sun around a singular plane, known as the ecliptic plane. The moon orbits the Earth along the same plane, more or less, according to the ball Earth theory, although the moon's plane of orbit is said to be offset to the ecliptic plane by about degrees.
Okay, happy with that so far.
When you extend the lunar orbit out nearly 250,000 miles, as they claim, this minor divergence of 5 degrees amounts to nearly 20,000 miles either north or ecliptic plane. It's important that I mention this alleged orbital divergence, although it really won't make much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. So, the moon's phases are an excellent indicator of the current positional between the Earth, the moon, and the sun, according to the ball Earth theory.
I think he's going to make a point now.
Well, that's very, very cheeky of you there to say something like that. However, if you don't set up all of the necessary caveats to make your point, you're 10,000 rebuttals from Globe Earth trolls because you didn't make those caveat setup statements to begin with. So, excuse me there, Dan, for trying to this point.
During the full moon phase, the moon should be 180 degrees opposite the sun, according to an observer on Earth. During the phase, the moon should be aligned to the sun, or on the same side of the Earth as the sun, and during either half-moon phase, the moon should be on Earth. Quite simply, we can often see the moon rising and setting when it should be on the completely opposite side of the Earth, almost 250,000 miles underneath your feet.
Well, no, because if you see the moon when it's either rising or setting, then you're going to be at one of these two spots.
Okay, so this is the point that really irked me. So, okay, what I was trying to just remember plenty of times in my life, seeing the sun come up and noticing that the full moon is low in the sky during broad daylight. Throughout the course of that day, as the sun is going overhead, the moon... Seems like the stream is now reconnected. Sorry about that. Let me try closing out some of these windows. Maybe this will help. I'm bogged down here. Do I need this one? Yes. Do I need this one? Good God. Hi, vey. Control of the mind. Oh. Righto. So, here we go. Get right back into it. Looks like the stream is still going.
Possibilities, according to the very ball Earth theory.
Except they are not. Take a look at this image. The full moon will look for me on October the 13th.
Okay, so basically, he's going to... my comment there, my claim was the crescent moon visible overhead in the middle of the night, and the star. So you've basically completely dodged the point, deflected, and called your observations the ball Earth model. What a load of crap.
I would be around here on the Earth at this point.
Exactly. So basically what he's doing here is he framed my first comment, which was that we often see the fully lit moon setting during broad daylight, and he took the either end of that spectrum, forget about the entire range of the moon being overhead during broad daylight, and says what I'm getting at is that the fully lit moon being fleetingly visible during the dusk and dawn hours, which does sort of align to the ball Earth model. But again, the point making, and what seems to be completely lost on Dan, is the fact that the fully lit moon is often visible directly overhead, rising and setting during the same day during broad daylight.
Now, around 6 hours later, this is how the full moon looks for me. And
so the full moon at night, that's what you would expect. That one particular observation, the problem is whether, let's say that this is the norm, that this sort of configuration where the moon is rising at 6:45 p.m. fully lit, if that was the norm and it happened every single day of the year except for one, even if you see the full moon, fully lit moon overhead during broad daylight, even one okay, it debunks the ball Earth theory. Doesn't matter if there's thousands of instances where the fully lit moon or the crescent moon aligns to the theory. If there's even one single instance where observation fails to meet the ball Earth theory, it is thus proven as a false theory.
I'd be standing here at this point. The crescent moon one is slightly more difficult because there's lots of variations for it. It also
here. Okay, so he's basically just talking to hear himself, really.
Your position on the globe, the time of year, plus that difference in its orbital inclination matters as well. Take a look.
Okay, but how does that 5-degree inclination in its orbit matter? Because I'm telling you, hopefully this doesn't bog down the stream. So we're at 9:30. Let me go back to this diagram here so I can kind of expand on what I was trying to say here. Okay. So basically, you've got that a tilt, allegedly, and the moon's orbital path, which is divergent either north or south of the ecliptic plane, depending on the time of the month. Okay. Now, if the Earth is tilted away from where the moon is at, so let's say we're just going to talk about north of the ecliptic plane. Okay. Earth is tilted off to the right, and you're in the northern hemisphere. When you're on the night side of the Earth, what he's saying is you should be able to see up and around to see something that is 250,000 miles away under your feet. The entire reason that I brought up the divergent alleged orbital path of the moon basically thwart any sort of rebuttal that we could have gotten along these lines, because I've already thought about this and it does not solve the issue. But instead of making any sort of logical commentary about how the moon's divergence from the ecliptic plane affects, he just says that it does, figures that's good enough, and moves on, when I was the one that brought it up because I've already been through this. So, I mean, I know that it seems like I'm ranting, but, you know, if I'm the one that brought up the point, and you're going to agree with me on that point, but you're not going to expand on what you mean, that's sort of a cop-out, but, you know, very typical for this sort of a thing. But again, you know, the point that I'm making is if the Earth is tilted at 23.4 degrees from the vertical here, you're on the night side of the Earth, that's irrelevant. Because again, we're a microscopic dot on this little ball here, and whether it's tilted a bit, just if it's got the right tilt, so like if it's tilted to the left and you're in the northern hemisphere, and you're up here near the northern Arctic Circle, perhaps you would be able to get a line of sight towards the full moon during the day, in that scenario, but of course you would still be on the night side of the Earth. It happens to be daytime because of the whole Arctic Circle thing, right? So, you know, it's just, it's frustrating because he's not actually debunking anything. He says that he agrees with me that this could come into play, but I'm telling you that it's not really going to affect this observation unless you're perhaps in the Arctic Circle and the tilt of the Earth is conducive to you getting a line of sight towards the moon, you know, during the day. Full moon during the day. So that was the point that I was trying to make, and he really failed miserably at even addressing what I was trying to say there. He just basically agreed with me. He said, yeah, you're going to have to take into account the 5-degree offset of the moon's orbital path, and then just blows right past it.
Lots of variations for it. It also depends on your position on the globe, the time of year, plus that 5-degree difference in its orbital inclination matters. Take a look at this short video.
Yeah, he said that like an expert, although he was basically just reiterating the point that I've already told him it's not going to affect this observation. So he did nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing of substance here.
I recorded from the Stellarium software that I've got. This is how the crescent moon will look from my location on the 25th of October.
Okay, so he's yet again cherry-picking another date that is conducive to his model, but again, aligns to the Ball Earth model 99% of the time. If it one single time ever does not align, if observation does not align with Earth model, it is thus disproven as false. This is very blatant and obvious to me. However, what he's doing is he's cherry-picking certain dates where the moon phases align to the Ball Earth model, and what I'm saying is that's irrelevant. All we need to do is find one single instance where this is not the case, right?
You can see the slightly illuminated portion of the moon causing the crescent shape, and it's rising at 3:45 AM. Now, watch as I speed up the Earth's rotation. You can see the moon gets fairly high in the sky before the sun rises. Look at how the sun and moon track together across the sky. Remember, they are not moving. The sun and the moon are in relatively fixed positions, and we are the ones rotating.
According to you, but I already know what your theory is, sir. I've been led to believe that nonsense my whole life, and I will vehemently disagree with you that it is in fact the Earth that is stationary and a planar surface, while the moon and the sun are orbiting, for lack of a better term, orbiting overhead the physical plane of reality.
Seeing it like this really shows you how the orbital mechanics of the solar system works.
Okay, so even if that one single example conforms to your beliefs, that's fine. But again, all we need is one example where it does not conform to your beliefs or it disagrees with your model, and that is proof negative against your model. I mean, it falls apart if one single instance of the moon does not align to what you're saying here. So sure, you can certainly cherry pick probably of dates where the moon aligns to the Ball Earth model, but again, even one single time is enough to debunk it. So, in other words, sometimes the moon's phases conforms to the Ball Earth theory, but many, many times it does not. Okay, and that is a big, big problem for the Ball Earth theory because allegedly you guys have it all figured out. You've got NASA to confirm your beliefs. However, if observable reality fails to align to your model, sir, then your model falls apart.
So, a bit of background is necessary to make this point as clear as possible. According to the Ball Earth theory, visible space should be the area opposite the sun. Subtracting out the twilight hours, we can visualize this quite adequately using two-dimensional diagrams. And this is often argued against by Ball Earth proponents who claim we must use 3D renderings to depict this point. However, I disagree, mainly because there's really only one plane of action involved here, the ecliptic plane.
Well, yes, and the 5-degree difference in the lunar orbit.
Right, but that isn't going to affect this at all. You know, I hate to keep on pulling up this diagram, but let's go ahead and do it one more time because you seem to be harping on this point. Maybe I shouldn't have given you any ideas about this 5-degree offset, but the only instance that this 5-degree offset of the moon's orbital path would allow you to see it from the night side of the Earth over here on the opposite side of the ball is if the Earth is tilted towards the moon and you're in the Arctic Circle. Perhaps you'll get a line of sight. But when you're over here near the equator, anywhere of substantial distance from the Arctic Circle, you're absolutely not going to be able to get a line of sight towards the moon over this thousands of miles of curves, and you certainly cannot see the sky beneath your feet. Can you, Skyman Dan? I mean, if you believe that you can see the sky clear on the opposite side of the Earth beneath your feet, then, I've got a bridge I'd love to sell to you.
Only one plane of action involved here, the ecliptic plane.
Well, yes, and the 5-degree difference in the lunar orbit.
As stated previously, the Earth moves along this singular plane, as does the Moon, according to the Ball Earth theory. The only divergence from the ecliptic plane would be the aforementioned 5-degree offset of the Moon's orbit. However, this would not affect the problem unless perhaps you're making your observation from the North Arctic Circle during the northern summer solstice.
What's a solstice?
That is so funny. So instead of responding to the point, I was trying to say northern summer solstice, which is a bit of a tongue twister, and I said northern summer solstice. It's a mere slip of the tongue. Now, instead of rebutting anything that I just said, whether he agrees with me or not, I don't know, he's just going to point out that I said the word solstice wrong and move on to the next point. Way to science, bruh. Way to science.
After an observer has allegedly spun around through the twilight zone, the sun will have set, and visible space will begin to pop into view. After we've lost sight of the sun, the last thing we should expect to see overhead is the crescent moon, either waxing or waning. It really makes no difference.
Well, it does, because the waxing crescent appears after sunset and the waning crescent appears before sunrise.
Okay, so basically this is yet another argument in semantics. What I really intended to say is whether you see the waxing moon after sunrise or the waning moon after sunset, maybe I've got that wrong, it's irrelevant. You're going to be on either side of that ball. So whether it's waxing or waning is irrelevant, although, yes, of course, it is going to make a difference whether it's, whether the sun is rising or setting in this instance, but again, this is an argument in semantics. It has nothing to do with the point. He's just arguing for the sake of argument. Just taking what I'm saying out of context, finding little flaws in the way that I verbalize something, and picking apart the flaws in my verbalization, as opposed to actually going to the meat of the subject, which is typical Lyman Dan bullshit.
As in my example.
This is a geometric certainty, since the crescent moon should be on the day side of the Earth.
Well, if you're referring to your diagram, well, of course, yes, but I think you know that it isn't just as simple as that.
Well, first of all, I am the one that brought up the entire 5-degree offset of the moon's orbital path, and other than that, one minor divergence from the ecliptic plane. It is that simple, Dan. It is. It is just this simple. And again, can you see what's behind you? Face forward. Can you see what's behind you? No, you can't, sir. Go get you a pumpkin. It's about Halloween anyway. Go buy you a pumpkin. Put a dot on the front of it. Align yourself to where you're looking directly at that dot and begin to rotate the pumpkin. Now, if you think that you can see that dot on the pumpkin when it goes beyond the 90 degrees off to the side and rotates, getting close to the back side of the pumpkin, then, this is the same thing. It is impossible. There is no possible way that you could see that dot on the opposite side of the pumpkin, much as we, the little dot on the pumpkin, cannot see the moon on the opposite side of the pumpkin Earth, or whatever, right? So, yes, it is that simple. It really is. And again, the reason that I brought up this 5-degree alleged divergence in the moon's orbital plane was to avoid this conversation right here altogether. But of course, you're still going to jump in there with your just complete nonsense shenanigans, man. Typical.
We view the moon rising and setting, allegedly due to the Earth spinning beneath the moon's current position, plus or minus 5 degrees along the ecliptic plane. To make the claim that the moon can be viewed while it's on the opposite side of the Earth, almost 250,000 miles underfoot, due to its orbital divergence from the ecliptic plane is just absolute nonsense. But it really is the only possible argument which Globers can muster against this very basic and irrefutable proof that was just described.
Well, I wouldn't say that this is a reason. I would say that your basic and irrefutable proof is a load of nonsense.
Oh, ad hominem. Well, there's some interesting scientific facts. Simon Dan calling my proof nonsense without offering any sort of, rational or logical or cogent argument against it. So let me put it to you this way, and this should cover all the bases. Face forward. Can you see what's behind you? No. All right, tilt your head up 90 degrees. Forget 23.4 or 66.6 even. Go 90 degrees. Tilt your head up 90 degrees. Look at the ceiling. Without turning your head, can you see what's behind you now? Absolutely not. It's irrelevant to the point, and yet, you're just going to say that it's nonsense, and I guess that's good enough scientific evidence for most people, but not for me.
And you once again cannot think in 3 dimensions. No one has ever said that you can see a full moon smack bang in the middle of the day.
Well, actually, sir, I don't care if anyone's ever said that. I have seen it. I have seen the full moon overhead smack bang in the middle of the day. Okay? So I don't care if anyone says it. It is observable. And it completely disagrees with your model, sir. Even if it only ever happened one single time ever, okay, and I'm not standing in the Arctic Circle during the northern summer solstice, whatever.
No one has ever said that you can see a crescent moon high in the sky at midnight.
I have seen it, sir. I certainly have.
You are taking examples of when we can see the moon and when we can't, and twisting those examples to suit your narrative.
No, sir, that is what you are doing. That's what a reflection of your own psychopathic tactics. That, sir, is what you're doing. You are cherry-picking certain examples of when the moon sort of aligns to your belief and putting those out as evidence. However, you're completely evading the entire purpose of the video that I made. And, I posed the question a couple weeks ago whether you were being purposefully obtuse or if you're being purposefully deceptive, and I would say it's a combination of the two.
When the reality of the matter is, you are failing to take countless things into consideration here.
Countless things such as what, Dan?
So the next time you see a full moon rising and setting, well...
Oh, but remember, according to the other commenter earlier, these are all photoshopped, and in fact, I took at least 2 or 3 of these pictures myself, pulled a couple of them off a line. The full moon can indeed be seen during broad daylight sometimes, and in fact I saw about a 90-95% full moon during broad daylight about a week ago. Okay, so it does happen relatively frequently, and for you to say that because nobody says you can see the full moon directly, at 12 o'clock overhead in the sky during broad daylight, it doesn't matter. If you can see the fully lit or 90% lit moon overhead, even if it's 80 degrees overhead during broad daylight, it debunks the ball, sir. It's very simple geometry, and I don't even know why I'm responding to this, but yeah, it really goes to show you the level of effort that needs to go into this from the Globe Earth side. They just really need to make fun of flat earthers, say some big and interesting sounding words, pull up cherry pick a couple of arguments that seem to suit their narrative, and make fun of flat earthers for 15 minutes, and that really is good enough.
Well overhead during daylight hours. Remember, this debunks the Globe Earth theory. The next time you see a slight crescent moon rising and setting well overhead in the middle of the night, remember, this also debunks the Globe Earth theory.
Except it doesn't, because you are misunderstanding how moon phases work. That is what's going on here.
So he's saying that I'm misunderstanding how moon phases work. He also made fun of my diagram about the moon phases here, but what substance has he actually debunked? I mean, he really has done nothing. It's a very clever tactic, and I definitely see where he's going with this. He just ignores the points, debunks red herring straw man arguments, and has little arguments in semantics and verbiage, but just completely evades the topic altogether. Make fun of Flat Earther, rinse and repeat. You've got yourself a successful YouTube channel there, Lie Man Dan. So I've had about enough of that one. It's about over anyway. Let's make sure that we're still live, because who ever knows? Yeah, so, wow. So it looks like perpetual limbo on the feed. Hopefully I can repair and stream again. Really, that's just so frustrating. Point. So I am sorry about the stream issues, you guys. I even went out and got my Ethernet cord and hooked it up to the modem here to try to avoid the Wi-Fi path loss or whatever, but no such luck. Maybe I need some system updates on the computer or something, but yeah, so hopefully, man, I figured I would cover what's in that. Maybe what I'll do real quick before we peace out is I'll go through some of the held for review and likely spam comments, because I do want to show you guys there's a lot of people out there that accuse me of not allowing their comments on my channel. And frankly, I really don't I don't do that at all. I don't ban people from my channel. I haven't done it in probably a couple of years, and there's maybe a dozen or two people that I did ban from my channel a couple of years ago. So over 1,600 comments held for review, which I'm not sure what lands them in that bucket, but Max5250 says, well, folks, that's what happens when a complete idiot can't understand that light ray divergent at plus or minus 0.25 degrees is still practically parallel. Okay, ad hominem, pretty simple. Well, now, here's the thing, though. Practically parallel doesn't get it. So we're talking about Eratosthenes' method of calculating the circumference of the Earth by first assuming that the Earth is a ball, and assuming that the Sun is nearly infinitely distant away, and assuming that the light rays from the Sun are reaching the Earth at nearly perfectly parallel angles. Okay, now, so his argument is that plus or minus 0.25 degrees is not perfectly parallel, or still practically parallel. Well, this really does fly in the face with the whole umbra and penumbra thing that explains away the very teeny tiny shadow of the moon in your model. So again, Eratosthenes says that the sunlight must be traveling at parallel angles, hitting the Earth at perfectly parallel angles to one another in order for his spherical trigonometry to work, in order to estimate the circumference of the hypothetical ball that he already assumed was a ball to begin with. Okay, now if you juxtapose that with the fact that the moon's shadow during total solar eclipses is usually 50 to 100 miles in diameter shadow, sometimes as little as 2 or 3 miles in diameter shadow, this at some point in space causing a divergent light source which casts a very peculiar and non-demonstrable shadow which actually tapers off into a point with distance. Now, again, nowhere in reality can you demonstrate light and shadow behaving this way, using a source in a single obstruction, and yet this is what we must believe is occurring in order for the moon's shadow to diminish in angular size to something like just a few diameter sometimes, when supposedly it's a 1,000-mile diameter object 250,000 miles away. So, not only is this all very ridiculous because there's such thing as shadows that taper off into a point, but this theory of the umbra-penumbra crap goes in direct contradiction with Eratosthenes' estimating the circumference of the Earth using the shadow angles of the Sun. Okay, now I will mention that using Eratosthenes' method of triangulation, these very same shadow angles at the exact same points on the exact same days, if you assume, however, that the Earth is a plane rather than a sphere, you get numbers which are wildly different than what the Earth numbers are. And, this is a huge discrepancy, a huge globe Earth theory. But of course, I'm a complete idiot because I can't goodness. Yeah, well, it looks like the stream is crapping out again, so I'm really sorry, you guys. I don't know what that here, but hopefully it hasn't been too difficult to watch. I guess what I'm going to do is just go ahead and wrap this one up. I will say that as I'd like to help support this channel, your support is greatly needed and appreciated. You can make contributions direct to PayPal at www.paypal.me/themorgile or through www.patreon.com/themorgile. I do want to take this opportunity to thank all of my Patreon supporters and PayPal supporters. I really appreciate you guys, and God bless you. And other than that, I suppose I will see you in the next stream, because this one is just crapping out too much, and I don't want to put you guys through this. But I think we did cover some good points, and I appreciate you all hanging out. And God bless you guys. And